Wish I'd bought some, Jake mumbled. Graham nodded in a silent agreement. He was a filthy shim, Cobb spat, seeming to find comfort in the familiar words. I might pay 2 in a tight time, but 10 is a robbery. Not if there are more of those on the road, Shep said darkly. All eyes went back to the thing on the table. He told me he'd heard of them over near Melcombe, Coat said quickly, watching everyone's faces as they studied the thing on the table. I thought he was just trying to drive up his prices. What else did he say? Carter asked. The innkeeper looked thoughtful for a moment, then shrugged. I didn't get the whole story. He was only in town for a couple hours. I don't like spiders, the smith's apprentice said. He remained on the other side of the table, some 15 feet away. Cover it up. It's not a spider, Jake said. It's got no eyes. It's got no mouth either, Carter pointed out. How does it eat? What does it eat? Shep said darkly. The innkeeper continued to eye the thing curiously. He leaned closer, stretching out a hand. Everyone edged even farther away from the table. Careful, Carter said. Its feet are sharp like knives. More like razors, Coat said. His long fingers brushed the Skrael's black, featureless body. It's smooth and hard like pottery. Don't go messing with it, the smith's apprentice said. Moving carefully, the innkeeper took one of the long, smooth legs and tried to break it with both hands like a stick. Not pottery, he amended. He set it against the edge of the table and leaned his weight against it. It broke with a sharp crack. More like stone. He looked up at Carter. How did it get all these cracks? He pointed at the thin fractures that crazed the smooth black surface of the body. Nellie fell on it, Carter said. It jumped out of a tree and started to climb all over her, cutting her up with its feet. It moved so fast. I didn't even know what was going on. Carter finally sank into a chair at Graham's urging. She got tangled in her harness and fell on it. Broke some of its legs. Then it came after me, got on me, crawling all over. He crossed his arms in front of his bloody chest and shuddered. I managed to get it off, and it stomped it as hard as I could. Then it got on me again. He trailed off, his face ashen. The innkeeper nodded to himself as he continued to prod the thing. There's no blood, no organs. It's just gray inside. He poked it with a finger, like a mushroom. Great Helu, just leave it alone, the smith's apprentice begged. Sometimes spiders twitch after you kill them. Listen to yourselves, Cobb said scathingly. Spiders don't get as big as pigs. You know what this is. He looked around, making eye contact with each of them. It's a demon. They looked at the broken thing. Oh, come on now, Jake said, disagreeing mostly out of habit. It's not like... He made an inarticulate gesture. It can't just... Everyone knew what he was thinking. Certainly there were demons in the world, but they were like Telu's angels. They were like heroes and kings. They belonged in stories. They belonged out there. Taborlin the Great called up fire and lightning to destroy demons. Telu broke them in his hands and sent them howling into the nameless void. Your childhood friend didn't stomp one to death on the road to Baden-Brit. It was ridiculous. Coat ran his hand through his red hair, then broke the silence. There's one way to tell for sure, he said, reaching into his pocket. Iron or fire. He brought out a bulging leather purse. And in the name of God, Graham pointed out, demons fear 3 things. Cold iron, clean fire, and the holy name of God. The innkeeper's mouth pressed itself into a straight line that was not quite a frown. "Of course," he said as he emptied his purse onto the table, then fingered through the jumbled coins. Heavy silver talents and thin silver bits, copper jots, broken halfpennies, and iron drabs. "Does anyone have a shim?" "Just use a drab," Jake said. "That's good iron." "I don't want good iron," the innkeeper said. "A drab has too much carbon in it. It's almost steel." "He's right," the smith's apprentice said. "Except it's not carbon. You use coke to make steel. Coke and lime." The innkeeper nodded deferentially to the boy. "You'd know best, young master. It's your business, after all." His long fingers finally found a shim in the pile of coins. He held it up. "Here we are." "What will it do?" Jake asked. "Iron kills demons." Cobb's voice was uncertain. "But this one's already dead. It might not do anything." "One way to find out." The innkeeper met each of their eyes briefly, as if measuring them. Then he turned purposefully back to the table, and they edged farther away. Coat pressed the iron shim to the black side of the creature, and there was a short, sharp crackling sound, like a pine log snapping in a hot fire. Everyone startled, then relaxed when the black thing remained motionless. Cobb and the others exchanged shaky smiles, like boys spooked by a ghost story. Their smiles went sour as the room filled with the sweet, acrid smell of rotting flowers and burning hair. The innkeeper pressed the shim onto the table with a sharp click. "Well," he said, brushing his hands against his apron, "I guess that settles that. What do we do now?" Hours later, the innkeeper stood in the doorway of the waystone and let his eyes relax to the darkness. Footprints of lamplight from the inn's windows fell across the dirt road and the doors of the smithy across the way. It was not a large road, or well-traveled. It didn't seem to lead anywhere, as some roads do. The innkeeper drew a deep breath of autumn air and looked around restlessly, as if waiting for something to happen. He called himself Coat. He had chosen the name carefully when he came to this place. He had taken a new name for most of the usual reasons, and for a few unusual ones as well, not the least of which was the fact that names were important to him. Looking up, he saw 1,000 stars glittering in the deep velvet of a night with no moon. He knew them all, their stories and their names. He knew them in a familiar way, the way he knew his own hands. Looking down, Coat sighed without knowing it, and went back inside. He locked the door and shuttered the wide windows of the inn, as if to distance himself from the stars and all their varied names. He swept the floor methodically, catching all the corners. He washed the tables and the bar, moving with a patient efficiency. At the end of an hour's work, the water in his bucket was still clean enough for a lady to wash her hands in. Finally, he pulled the stool behind the bar and began to polish the vast array of bottles nestled between the two huge barrels. He wasn't nearly as crisp and efficient about this chore as he had been with the others, and it soon became obvious the polishing was only an excuse to touch and hold. He even hummed a little, although he did not realize it, and would have stopped himself if he had known. As he turned the bottles in his long, graceful hands, the familiar motion eased a few tired lines from his face, making him seem younger, certainly not yet 30. Not even near 30. Young for an innkeeper. Young for a man with so many tired lines remaining on his face.